We just talked about the wedding arrangements. The ex-girlfriend of my fiancé suddenly ran out crying. Ethan got so angry that he slapped me. I fell to the ground. He looked very angry with me. Sophia, are you particularly eager to get married? Are you worried about not being able to find a husband? So you're desperately clinging to me, forcing me to get married. 1 week later, our wedding has been postponed. I covered my face with my hands, but inside I was extraordinarily calm. There wasn't a trace of turmoil. This is already the 8th time he has postponed the wedding. I have been waiting for him since I was 28, waiting until my 30s, still with no results. This time, I calmly packed my luggage, decided to leave. This marriage doesn't have to happen. I covered my face. The place where I was hit felt hot and painful. I trembled all over. I couldn't control my shaking. The man standing in front of me, my fiancé. He looks at me with disgust. He even wiped the hand that just hit me with a tissue, as if it were dirty. Sophia, you clearly know that Emily is not well. Why bring up our wedding in front of her? What are you really thinking? That's right. I did say I would marry you, but are you really that anxious? Is it true that no one else would want you besides me? Can't you wait a little longer? His face is full of impatience. There's also a hint of contempt in his eyes. I suddenly remember the heartfelt words Ethan said when he proposed to me 3 years ago. Sophia, I really want to marry you quickly. That way we can be together forever. Not long after that, I took the initiative to talk to him about marriage. Ethan once promised me a grand and luxurious wedding. However, I've been looking forward to this wedding for 3 years, and it still hasn't happened. Initially, he told me there was still plenty of time. We're still young. There's no rush to get married. I thought he was just nervous about marriage, so I kept comforting him and told him not to worry too much. Then there was the second wedding. He said there were issues at work. He had to go on a business trip, and the return time was uncertain. It was postponed again. And so it went, back and forth. It's already been postponed 8 times. Each time I went to see the wedding venue with great anticipation and negotiated with the wedding host. I prepared little red envelopes and gifts, but Ethan always found various excuses. Time and again he deferred. Until today, I finally couldn't hold back any longer. We're no longer young, and our careers have stabilized. I mustered the courage to ask him when we would have the wedding. To my surprise, he slapped me directly across the face. We have been silent for a long time. I tightly pressed my lips together. The ear that was hit buzzed loudly. My cheek quickly became swollen and bruised. The pain has already gone numb. Ethan sighed. He turned to leave. I instinctively grabbed his hand. I asked in a low voice. He asked, "Where are you going?" Then he reacted as if he had been electrocuted. He quickly shook off my hand. He stepped back half a step. I was stunned for a moment. My hand froze in midair. I stared at him blankly. He hurriedly said, "I'm sorry, Sophia. I was too impulsive just now. I'll go get you some ointment right now." Ethan quickly found an excuse. His voice was low, filled with regret. This time I pressed my lips tightly. I stopped talking. We have been in love for 3 years. I suddenly feel like he seems a bit unfamiliar. Just now, he was unhesitatingly making a move against me. But now he's lowering his head to apologize to me. After Ethan left, he hasn't come back for a long time. I'm worried. I'm planning to find him. I had just reached the lamp post in front of the hotel when I saw 2 figures hugging each other. The man was leaning down, whispering in the woman's ear, "Emily, don't worry, as long as you don't agree. I definitely won't marry her. You have given so much for me. No matter what you say, I will listen to you." I desperately held back the sadness in my heart. I covered my mouth with my hand for fear that I would cry out loud. I wanted to rush up and ask for clarity, but my feet felt like they were nailed to the ground. I couldn't take a step forward no matter what. After a while, Ethan finally reluctantly let go of Emily. He walked towards me. When I saw this, I hurriedly ran back home in a panic. I hadn't even reached home yet. Then Ethan's call came in. He sounded a bit angry. He shouted at me, "Sophia, didn't I tell you to wait for me at the hotel? Where did you run off to again?" My throat felt bitter. Uncontrollably, tears started to flow. I wanted to question him, but the words turned into a feeling of grievance. Ethan paused on the other end of the line. Then he gently comforted me. "I was worried because you hadn't returned, so I went home to wait for you. It's all my fault. I got delayed in traffic. I had just sat down on the sofa for a short while. When Ethan came back, it felt like a date was suddenly interrupted. It was just as annoying as having to go home disappointed. He threw the ointment directly at me. He said, "The medicine is here. You can apply it yourself." I tightened my grip on the ointment in my hand, staring blankly at his back. He gritted his teeth and said, "The injury on my face was caused by you. Can you help me apply some medicine?" Ethan clearly showed a hint of disdain and contempt in his eyes. He turned his head to avoid my gaze. He let out a cold laugh. His tone was indifferent. "That's something you brought upon yourself. Moreover, can't you do it yourself at your age? If you can't see it, can't you figure it out on your own? Must you wait for others to teach you how to do it?" He asked me several questions in succession. It made me feel very ashamed. But I remember, he wasn't like this before, when he used to cook. Even if I had a tiny cut on my finger, he would hurriedly bring me a Band-Aid to put on. At that time, I thought he was too nervous. I laughed and said he was overreacting. I said if he was any slower, the wound would have healed by now. He suddenly covered my mouth. His eyes were red. He painedly urged me not to say anything. I walked into the bathroom with the ointment. I stood in front of the sink. I started applying the medicine in front of the mirror. At that moment, I vaguely heard him on the phone. His voice was loud. I heard him clearly. My heart gradually calmed down. "Tomorrow I'm going to the hospital to see Grandpa. Emily, do you want to go with me? Is it appropriate for me to see Grandpa?" "What's inappropriate about it? Grandpa has known you for a long time. If it weren't for you saving Grandpa, he might not have made it this far. Besides, Grandpa already considers you his granddaughter-in-law. Don't say that. It's going to make me embarrassed. You already have a fiancé. I'm afraid I'll never have that opportunity in this lifetime." His tone suddenly became firm. "It's impossible. In this lifetime, I will only marry you." A sudden sound came from somewhere. The ointment slipped from my hand. It fell into the wash basin. It made a thud sound. Ethan heard the noise. He immediately hung up the phone. Furrowing his brow, he quickly walked to the bathroom. He saw me applying the medicine. His brow furrowed even tighter. He tentatively asked me what was wrong. "Sophia, tomorrow I'm going to the hospital to see Grandpa. Do you want to go with me?" Even though I already know the outcome, it still feels like I've been stabbed countless times in my heart. It hurts terribly. I stared at myself in the mirror. Half of my swollen face looked frightening. I asked, "You think it's appropriate for me to see Grandpa looking like this? Would you agree to let me see Grandpa?" So many years have passed. Every time I suggested going to see Grandpa with him, Ethan always managed to find a bunch of excuses to avoid it, just like he refused our wedding back then. So now, here we are. I don't even know what his grandpa looks like. All I know is that Ethan was raised by his grandpa. He is the closest person to him. I didn't expect that. He has already taken Emily to meet his closest family many times. I held back the sting in my nose. I asked him again if I wanted to go. "Would you take me?" Ethan didn't say anything. He took the ointment from my hand, gently applying it for me. Then he comforted me and said, "Sophia, don't worry. When your injury heals, I will take you to meet Grandpa. You're so well-behaved and lovely. Grandpa will definitely like you." I remained silent, but inside I was filled with big question marks. In these 3 years, he has made many similar promises to me. In the past, I always thought he was sincerely considering me, so I never pushed him. Now I suddenly realize, those empty promises of his have long been impossible to fulfill. He didn't take me to meet his grandpa. This shows he doesn't see me as a fiancé at all. The next morning, Ethan left early. No need to guess. He must be going to pick up Emily, then they would go to the hospital to see his grandpa. I washed my face, put on a mask, and went out to look for a rental apartment. The place I'm living in now belongs to Ethan. I'm planning to move out. On my way to meet the landlord to view the apartment, I couldn't help but check Emily's social media. The photo shows her, Ethan, and an elderly man together. The caption reads "family photo." In the comments below, it's filled with words of blessing. Although I already knew about this last night, my chest still feels like it's pressed by a stone. It's hard to breathe. I stared blankly at the photo. It wasn't until the driver reminded me to get off that I came back to my senses. Before leaving, I liked their post. I also left a message of blessing. The apartment viewing went smoothly. The location of the house is great. It's right next to a hospital. A little while ago, I passed the nursing exam, just in time to be hired by this hospital to start working. I originally planned to tell Ethan the good news today, but now it seems unnecessary. After I paid the house deposit, I was preparing to go back and pack my things. Unexpectedly, when passing by the hospital entrance, I ran into Ethan and Emily. They were holding hands, their fingers tightly intertwined. To say I ran into them, Actually, it was Emily who saw me first. She unapologetically pulled Ethan over to me, speaking to me in a sarcastic tone. Sophia, you're here too. Are you here with Ethan? Since you're here, why not go upstairs and see Grandpa when you came over? Didn't you tell Ethan? Ethan seemed a bit nervous. Ethan appears to be a bit nervous. He took a half step forward. He blocked our hands that were held together, then quickly let go, but at Emily's reminder, her nervousness instantly turned to anger, staring at me. A flash of rage crossed her eyes. What are you doing here? I don't think I told you where I was. He frowned. His expression suddenly changed. His gaze was fiercely fixed on me. Sophia, you actually followed me. He stepped forward, forcing me to take a step back. His face was frighteningly dark. He suddenly grabbed my arm with one hand. With the other hand, he tore off my mask. You're like this, not resting properly at home. Why are you still following me? Didn't I tell you to wait until your face gets better? I would take you with me. Now you are following me. Is it interesting? Ethan criticizes me with every word. He has no intention of listening to my explanation. Passers-by are staring at my swollen face. I feel very embarrassed. I can only use my right hand to cover a bit. I grit my teeth and argue with him. I didn't follow you. You didn't follow me. Then why are you here? Ethan questions me angrily. He looks very angry. Don't tell me you came to the hospital for treatment. This little injury on your face. Is it necessary to come to the hospital? Or do you have some serious illness? Are you about to collapse? A sudden wave of discomfort hits me. It's like something is blocking my chest. It hurts and feels heavy, but I've already decided not to tell him anything. I won't say that I rented a place here. And I definitely won't say I got into this hospital, preparing to start work. In the end, I am left speechless. I can only let Ethan scold me. Why aren't you talking? Sophia, you really surprised me. If you just say you want to see Grandpa, would I not agree? You actually started to follow me. Does that mean I have to tell you first wherever I go? Do I have to inform you first wherever I go? I was stunned for a moment. My heart was filled with grievances. I didn't know how to respond. Clearly, it was always him who didn't let me come. He always found various reasons to refuse me. Now he turns around and blames me for being wrong. I took a deep breath. I tried hard to hold back my tears. I wouldn't let them fall. She stubbornly stared at Ethan. She said firmly, "No matter whether you believe it or not, I really didn't follow you." After saying that, she didn't care about Ethan's surprised gaze. She directly hailed a taxi and left, just as she got into the car. Her tears started to flow uncontrollably. Forget it, just let them be. As soon as I entered the house, my phone rang. It was a call from Ethan. He asked, "Sophia, are you home?" He spoke softly as usual, as if today's conflict and accusations had never happened, but his voice, to me, sounded like a hypocritical disguise. I instinctively wanted to hang up, but there needs to be a resolution between Ethan and me. Clearly, he was in the wrong. Why should I avoid him? Is there something? I'm at the hotel. I sent you the location. I think the decor style here is quite nice. Come over and see if you like it. I hung up the phone. My mind was filled with questions. Hotel, could it be because of our wedding? But this is completely unlike Ethan's style. In the past, I urged him. He didn't even want to participate in such matters. This time, he actually brought it up himself. I put on light makeup and went to the hotel at the location. It was only when I got there that I realized. This hotel is completely different from the 8 I chose before. I looked at Ethan with confusion. I asked, "Didn't you say the wedding should be simple? Why did you choose such a nice hotel this time?" Emily finished speaking and came down the stairs. She was talking to the hotel manager as she walked. She said to Sister Sophia, "Don't you think this hotel is nice too?" Ethan said he plans to hold my birthday party here. The confusion on my face suddenly froze. Ethan stepped forward to greet Emily. Then he casually showed me a look of disgust. He even scolded me a few times. "Don't say random things. It's just to let you check out how the hotel is. Don't think about those unrealistic things." I felt embarrassed. I gritted my teeth. I nodded slightly. His hands were tucked into his sleeves. He was gripping them so tightly that they trembled slightly. But he had to suppress all his emotions. He squeezed out each word one by one. "Very good. Pretty good." Emily walked over. She immediately linked her arm with mine. "Hey, Sophia, you must come to my birthday party. I really want to receive your blessing." After saying that, in a place only the two of us could see, Emily unabashedly showed me a sarcastic smile. She clearly knew I had just argued with Ethan about the hotel wedding. It was a huge fight. Today, he brought up the birthday party to provoke me again. I couldn't hold it in anymore. In a fit of anger, I pushed Emily to the ground. She let out a scream. Lying on the ground, she was crying. Her body was half turned. Tears were welling up in her eyes. "Hey, Sophia, I just wanted your blessing. If you don't like me, that's fine. But why did you have to push me, Sophia? Are you okay?" Ethan was very worried. He hurried over to help Emily up. He comforted her softly for a long while. Then he turned around and shouted at me angrily. "If you have a problem, go see a doctor. Don't cause trouble here with me. If Emily gets hurt, even if I sold you, I couldn't afford it." I was almost heartbroken to the point of not being able to breathe. It felt like I was about to suffocate. I stubbornly stared at him, with tears glistening in my eyes. "Right, if I'm sick, I'll go get treated. Wishing you and Emily a long-lasting marriage. May you have children soon." After saying that, I turned and left the hotel. When I got home, the light makeup on my face had been smudged by tears. I quickly packed my luggage and directly moved into a rental place. I only left Ethan a copy of the annulment agreement. In the next 2 days, neither Ethan nor I contacted each other. He didn't come home either. On Emily's social media, I saw them exploring every nook and cranny of the city. She said it was the best birthday gift she had ever received in her life. The last photo, it was a scene of them hugging and kissing in the hotel banquet hall. I liked it as usual and left a message of blessing. Then, I smiled wryly and exited the app. Being with Ethan all these years, he always said going out was boring. He never wanted to take the time to accompany me, but now it seems he is having quite a good time. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of Emily's birthday party. Today is my first day at the hospital. 2 days later, Ethan finally sent me a message. He said, "Today is Emily's birthday party. You have to come. Otherwise, I won't let you off easily." I didn't reply to the message. I continued to focus on work. Suddenly, the phone rang at the nurse's station. I hurried to room 18. An elderly man was unconscious. The machine by the bedside was beeping. The doctor finished the examination. He immediately asked me to make a call. Quickly notify the family. Prepare for surgery. I picked up the phone at the nurse's station. I dialed the family's number. "Hello, are you the family member of the patient, James?" he said. A familiar laughter came from the other end of the line. "Sophia, it's you, right? He. When did you become a nurse? You're really putting in a lot of effort. But do you think you can fool me just by calling from a landline? Do you know that you keep bothering me like this? It's really making me uncomfortable." I didn't expect it to be him on the other end of the phone, due to the requirements of my nursing profession. I suppressed my displeasure and calmly said to him, "Hello, family member. The patient suddenly experienced heart failure and liver dysfunction. Immediate surgery is required. Please come to the hospital as soon as possible. I have delivered the message. Believe it or not, I just hope you won't regret it later." Ethan suddenly exploded with anger on the phone. The volume was terrifying. "Sophia, let me tell you, if anything happens to my grandpa, I will never forgive you in this lifetime. Then I'll just wait for you to not forgive me. That's all I have to say." I hung up the phone directly. Ethan shouted loudly before hanging up, but no one paid attention. After returning to the ward, the doctors worked hard to save the old man. Fortunately, the rescue was timely this time. The old man soon woke up. As soon as I opened my eyes, he immediately grabbed my hand. With an excited smile, he said, "It's you. It really is you. Little nurse, thank you for saving this old man once again." I turned my head, looking at the old man in front of me. I quickly persuaded him to calm down. "Don't be too excited. Your current situation is not suitable for emotional fluctuations. I am reconnecting various medical monitoring devices for the elderly." Suddenly, I recalled an accident from a long time ago from his words. Back then, I had just started learning nursing knowledge. I happened to save an elderly person at the airport. Because I was in a hurry to catch a flight, I handed the elderly person over to the airport staff, and then I left. I didn't expect the elderly person still remembers me to this day. "Grandpa, it's you. It's been 3 years since we last met. I almost forgot you. I really didn't expect you still remember me." The elderly person held my hand tightly and wouldn't let go. The elderly person said gratefully, "Of course I have to remember my savior. If it weren't for you, this old body of mine would have been gone long ago. How could I live to this day and have the chance to see my grandson's wedding?" Hearing him say this, my heart suddenly jolted, thinking about the matter between Ethan and me. I'm feeling increasingly uneasy. I said goodbye to the old man. After changing out of my nurse uniform, I was off work. I had just stepped out of the hospital when I saw Ethan taking a taxi over. He was running very fast. His clothes weren't even properly arranged. He still had a lot of ribbons stuck on him. Calculating the time, Emily's birthday party should have just started. He hurried over in a rush. I quietly hid in the crowd. I didn't let him notice me. After Ethan rushed into the hospital lobby, I also quickened my pace. Before I could get back to my rented room, his call came in again. But this time I didn't answer. He immediately sent a text message. "Sophia, where are you? Did you go home? Why didn't you answer my call? Are you still mad at me? I misunderstood you. You saved Grandpa once again. This time I'll agree to whatever you say." I hadn't had the chance to delete the message. His phone is ringing again. I really can't take it anymore. I might as well block him. I didn't expect that. It hasn't even been an hour. A strange number called me, at first. I thought it was an emergency from the hospital. Only after answering did I realize it was Ethan. He sounded really anxious. "Sophia, did you block me? Can you tell me where you are? I have something I need to explain to you. This is really important." I sneered. Without saying a word, I hung up the phone. What could he possibly explain? I already have a good idea. But for me, it's no longer important, because Ethan and I will never have any intersection in this lifetime. I blocked that number again and prepared to sleep peacefully. I had just put my phone on the bedside. The ringtone went off again. This time, it was Emily calling. As soon as I answered, she came through with an annoyed tone. "Sophia, you are really impressive. Today is such an important day for me. How could you even get Ethan to leave? Why are you being so unreasonable? Ethan clearly has no feelings for you, yet you insist on clinging to him. Let me make it clear to you, as long as I am alive, you can forget about marrying her. This is already the 8th time the wedding has been canceled. There will be a 9th and a 10th time in the future, possibly even more. You are destined to never have a wedding in this lifetime." I smiled softly. I responded only after she finished speaking. "Are you done talking?" Even over the phone. I could clearly feel Emily was momentarily stunned. After she finished, I hung up. If I had heard these words before, I might have been really upset. But now I feel very calm. I just hung up the phone directly, and then I blocked Emily's number. Since I've decided to leave, they can no longer affect me. On the other end, Ethan is almost going crazy looking for Sophia. First, he searched the entire house. Then he ran all over the hospital. He also went to the park that Sophia loves to visit the most. But he still found nothing. In the end, he only found an empty wardrobe at home and the agreement to annul their engagement on the table. He carefully read the agreement word by word. Unconsciously, his eyes started to turn red. His pupils were filled with bloodshot veins. After reading it, he suddenly tore the agreement into pieces. "No way, Sophia. I will never annul our engagement," Ethan shouted loudly, filled with emotion. His voice was so loud that even the neighbors came to complain. When the property management came to mediate, they suddenly asked Ethan if he was planning to move recently. He was taken aback, unconsciously shook his head. The property staff said with some confusion, "A few days ago, I saw Sophia call for a moving truck. A lot of things have already been taken away. I thought you guys were moving." Ethan immediately grabbed the property manager's shoulder tightly. His eyes were wide open. He seemed very anxious. He asked eagerly, "Where did she take a taxi to? Do you know where she took a taxi to?" The property manager was also surprised. After thinking for a long time, he could only shake his head and say he didn't know. Then, they heard Ethan ask again, "You know what day this happened?" "About 2 days ago, I guess." 2 days ago. Ethan fell into deep thought. 2 days ago. He accompanied Emily to explore the whole city. They went to the amusement park, and they rode the Ferris wheel together. I went to climb the nearby mountain, and I watched the sunrise. He walked home slowly. It has only been 2 or 3 days. No one has cleaned the house. It has already accumulated a thick layer of dust. Sophia usually takes care of these daily chores. He never pays attention, nor does he take the initiative to get involved. But at this moment, he suddenly wants to experience what it feels like to do these things. He hasn't finished cleaning the entire house. He has only mopped the living room floor and wiped the table. He's already exhausted. He lies weakly on the sofa, gasping for breath. Instinctively, he takes out his phone. He calls Sophia again, but it still doesn't go through. He is still blocked. He suddenly feels immense regret. All those years with Sophia. What has he done? After all, the wedding has been postponed time and time again by him. He has stood her up multiple times, leaving her disappointed. Not long ago, he even impulsively slapped her. Thinking of these things, Ethan suddenly feels scared. He finally realizes how ridiculous he has been all these years, all because of someone unworthy. He hurt the person who loved him the most. She is also the person he should cherish the most. She waited for him for 3 years. She meticulously planned 8 weddings. But what did he do? He ruthlessly shattered her 8 sincere intentions. And he even disdainfully stepped on them a few times. If Sophia really leaves him, what will he do? Not to mention Grandpa won't let him off the hook. He can't even forgive himself. At that moment, the door lock clicked. Emily walked in with a face full of sadness. She tearfully said to Ethan, "Ethan, are you unable to find Sister Sophia? I just wanted you to help me celebrate a birthday, but when I called her, she actually blocked me. She really is a bit calculating. Now she's even using these tricks. She's not young anymore, and she's still playing hide-and-seek like a child, and she even blocked my number. But don't worry, brother Ethan, I think she's just trying to scare you on purpose. You just don't want my birthday party to go smoothly today. Besides, she has no support here. She only knows a few of us. Where else can she go?" Emily hasn't finished speaking yet. Ethan couldn't help but slap her hard. He seemed to feel it wasn't enough. He kicked her again. If it weren't for Emily deceiving him, how could he have gotten into this situation with Sophia? Sophia ran away. She's avoiding me. Are you especially happy? One hand grabbed Emily's hair. He forcefully pulled her up from the ground. His gaze was very fierce. You deceived me for so many years. You made me hurt Sophia time and again, and now you still want to sow discord, to make me angry at Sophia. Emily, you really are something. You treat me like a puppet. Let me tell you, if you can't find Sophia, you will never have peace in your life." Ethan yanked Emily out the door. He threw her out forcefully. His last glance at her was filled with anger and coldness. He actually hurt the girl who loved him the most for a liar, causing her both physical and emotional pain. For the next 2 days, Ethan searched the entire city, but there was still no news of me. He had no choice but to wait at the hospital. After learning that I was on vacation, he could only think of another way. During these 2 days, I stayed at home to rest. I relied on takeout for my meals. Every day I received quite a few unfamiliar calls and messages. I randomly picked a couple to look at. I immediately realized Ethan was looking for me. It seemed that, after returning home, he saw the annulment agreement I left there. However, I did not reply to any messages. I simply turned off my phone. This action was undoubtedly the clearest response. In the evening, the door of the rental apartment is suddenly knocked on. The sound is urgent. I opened the door. I saw Ethan standing at the door. He looked a bit disheveled. His hair was messy from the wind. His coat was also wet. It looked like he had been caught in the rain. After seeing me, he leaned against the doorframe. He clearly relaxed. He had gotten some information from the property management. Through a friend, he found the driver's phone number from the day I called for a ride. Then, he spent 2 whole days looking for me. Although I understood it was difficult to hide living in this rental place from someone who was determined, I didn't expect he would find me so quickly. Ethan was silent for a moment. Then he quietly asked, "Sophia, why did you move out? Stop messing around. Let's go home." As he said this, he walked over and tried to grab my wrist to take me away. I forcefully shook him off. Frowning, I fixed my gaze on him. "Stop pretending. Is that all right? I have already left you the agreement to dissolve our engagement. Our relationship has long been over. That is your home." "It's not my home." His expression suddenly froze. His body also gradually became tense. She tightly pressed her lips together. There was silence for quite a while. Then he shook his head and said, "I disagree. I will not agree to a divorce. Sophia, give me another chance. In this lifetime, I only want to be with you." Upon hearing this, I laughed so hard I couldn't stand up straight. This is him. He can say the same thing to 2 women without hesitation. "Ethan, I remember you have said this before. But last time it was to Emily." As soon as the words were out, Ethan was stunned. He stood outside the door, a bit flustered. He wanted to explain something, but in the end, he just opened his mouth and only managed to squeeze out one sentence. "I'm sorry. That day in the bathroom, did you hear everything?" He said with a face full of regret. "Sophia, everything is my fault. You have to believe me. I was also deceived by Emily. She lied to me saying she saved my grandpa. That's why I fell for her lies. We've postponed our wedding for so many years. It's all my fault. I'm sorry. Sophia, now I understand in the future. I won't easily trust others. This time our wedding will definitely go smoothly. Whatever you say goes. Which hotel to book, which efficient to choose. I'll follow your lead. I just ask that you don't leave. I really can't live without you. Every time I close my eyes, your face appears in front of me. But when I open my eyes, it disappears without a trace. I'm really about to break down, Ethan said blankly. With red-rimmed eyes, her voice was choked with emotion. But what should we do now? I no longer love him. Ethan has said so much. Don't you have any issues at all? Can a single apology make me forget the pain you've caused me? I loved you wholeheartedly for 3 years. Each time I carefully prepared a wedding, you rejected it without hesitation. This isn't just once or twice, but a total of 7 times. I'm tired. Let me go. It's also letting yourself go. Okay, I'll close the door once I'm done speaking. He was unwilling. He put his hand in the door crack. As a result, it got caught in the door. His hand instantly swelled up, bruised and raised. Ethan gritted his teeth. Not a word. He just looked at me with a pitiful expression. I shot him a cold glance. Step aside. I don't want to hold any resentment against you. Close the door. A faint sound of low sobbing came from outside. The sound was intermittent. Mixed in were words filled with remorse. It sounded like it was trembling uncontrollably. The next morning, I went to work at the hospital as usual. Not long after I changed into my uniform, the head nurse gave me a strange look. She told me that a patient specifically requested me to bandage him. At first, I didn't think much of it. It wasn't until I went to the emergency room that I realized the person was Ethan. His hand, which had been caught last night, hadn't been treated. Now it was even more swollen. As soon as he saw me, his face immediately showed a look of surprise. He was both worried about me leaving and trying hard to control his emotions. With a hint of grievance, he said, "Sophia, look at my hand. It seems to be quite seriously injured. I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to help me bandage it." I didn't say a word, nor did I walk away. I just treated him like a regular patient. Take care of Ethan's wound, apply medicine and bandage it. Finally, I coldly reminded him to change the dressing recently after finishing the tasks. I returned to the nurse's station, just finished a busy morning. Ethan, undeterred, brought me lunch again. The head nurse stood outside the door, peeking at me carefully as soon as I came out. She shoved the lunch box into my hands. She said, "Sophia, these are all your favorite dishes. Don't refuse anymore. Just take it as a thank you for helping me bandage my wound today." He looked very pitiful when he spoke, but I still didn't accept his kindness. "I'll help you bandage your wound. It's because you came to the hospital for registration. The hospital will pay me, so I don't need your thanks." Ethan returned the lunchbox. His lips were pressed tightly into a straight line. By the time afternoon's shift ended, I thought Ethan would give up. I didn't expect him to bring his grandpa this time. He's the one who kept holding on to me last time, and the old man who took pictures with me, although I already had the answer in my heart. Seeing them together still felt a bit unbelievable. After the old man's explanation, I finally understood the complicated relationship. It turns out, when I entrusted the old man to the airport staff, that person was Emily. Later, Ethan mistakenly thought it was Emily who saved his grandpa, so he's been particularly good to her all these years. There are deep feelings involved. Sophia, let me call you that too. Regarding this matter, Ethan is indeed at fault, but the most excessive one is Emily. Can you forgive him? This time I'm here to officiate your wedding. I understand the old man's thoughts, but understanding doesn't mean I have to accept it. Grandpa, you are mistaken. I broke off my engagement with Ethan 3 days ago. We won't hold a wedding, and we won't get married. His current girlfriend is Emily. You can contact her directly to ask. After I finished speaking, I changed clothes and left work. When I came out, the old man had already left. Only Ethan remained, listlessly following behind me. He kept his distance from me, and he didn't say a word. I returned to the rented apartment. He was standing downstairs, looking up at me from a distance, until I pulled all the curtains closed. He could no longer see me. The next morning, I thought Ethan had already left. Unexpectedly, just as I stepped out, I saw him sleeping on a bench in the community garden. He seemed to react instinctively. He stood up suddenly and cautiously walked in front of me. He spoke up a bit awkwardly. "Sophia, I'm sorry. I was too tired last night. I just slept here for a while." I felt a bit helpless listening to it. He was the one who decisively canceled the wedding back then. He even said he would never marry me in this lifetime. Now he's pretending to be deeply affectionate again. I'm too lazy to deal with him anymore. I changed my clothes and went to the hospital. Then I went straight to work. The following days were quite calm, but soon there was a little setback. Ethan's grandpa is getting old. His condition worsened. This time they couldn't save him. That day, I happened to have a day off. The next day, when I went to work at the hospital, I learned this news from my colleagues. Ethan was organizing the belongings left at the grandpa's bedside. I sighed. Still, I offered my condolences to him. He turned his head around. He seemed completely numb. It's my fault that Grandpa is gone. If it weren't for all these recent events, Grandpa might have been able to stay with me for another 2 years. Grandpa always wanted to see me settle down in life. Unfortunately, I'm not successful. I have never been able to fulfill his wishes. Sophia, I lost you, and I even caused Grandpa's death. You think I'm particularly useless, I nodded. But I didn't say anything. I could at least say my condolences to him. That was the biggest concession I could make. Later, I heard from a friend. Ethan is already married, and surprisingly, his spouse is Emily. Although this is somewhat unexpected, thinking about it carefully, it makes sense. After all, she has always been the one he loves most. Not long after, that day it was my turn to work the night shift. A woman covered in blood was pushed down from the ambulance. I thought she looked somewhat familiar, until Ethan, also bloodied and disheveled, signed as a family member. It was then that I suddenly realized who she was. The woman is Emily. She is covered in scars. There are bruises all over her body. Ethan has been avoiding me. He doesn't want to see me anymore. Colleagues are talking about Emily's situation. Everyone thinks she is quite pitiful. Her entire skin is injured. There isn't a single good spot. This time she managed to survive. She is really lucky. If this continues, something will happen sooner or later. As soon as Emily regained consciousness, she immediately called the police. Before Ethan was taken away, it was downstairs from the apartment I rented. He looked very calm, but his eyes were full of regret. As he walked past me, he said, "Sophia, if I hadn't refused that wedding 3 years ago, we would probably be very happy now." He spoke as if I knew nothing about hypothetical situations. I don't want to mention it again. All I understand is, life is one's own. You need to learn to make yourself happy and fulfilled.